Okay. Hi, I want to welcome everyone for episode 6 in the Back to Black webinar series. I'm Stan Phelps.
I'm David Rendall,
co-author on the Pink Goldfish. Excited. This is probably my favorite color in the entire series. A little bit of background though on why we called it Back to Black. So the inspiration comes from AC/DC. I'm not going to get into the big story, but essentially the band lost their lead singer in early 1980. Very quickly they had to replace. They hired a new lead singer, and within 7 weeks they launched one of the greatest albums of all time, Back in Black. Today it's going to be about 5 ways to defy normal and captivate your customers. So let me ask you a question. Imagine that you're a marketer and you have to market cough syrup. Let's imagine you have to market cough syrup. So what's the weakness, or what makes cough syrup horrible? It's simply this, it's the taste. So what do most cough syrup companies do? Well, they try to flavor their cough syrup. They say that theirs doesn't taste as bad as their competition. Well, there's one company, and that company is called Buckley's. And do me a favor in the chat, if you've ever had Buckley's cough syrup before, sign into the chat on what Buckley's tastes like. It tastes awful. And so instead of Buckley's actually trying to hide that bad taste, they decided to lean into it. And in their advertising, they actually said it tastes worse than you actually even think it is. And in their campaign, they actually compared Buckley's to, get this, trash bag leakage and sweaty gym socks. Both times, Buckley's was the loser. What was the takeaway? It tastes awful. Why? Because it works. Now, a little bit of background. Did this actually make an impact on the brand? To share the results, when they started this campaign, they had just 2% of the market in Canada. After the campaign, when they embraced that weakness, they shot up to 11% of the market. A 550% increase in sales. Buckley's is a great example of what we call a pink goldfish. And the idea of differentiating is key for your product or service. And so here's the thing. We all know that differentiation is important, but here is the challenge, is that very few are able to accomplish it. In the words of Youngme Moon, professor from Harvard Business School, wrote a great book called Different, the number of companies who actually are able to achieve competitive separation is depressingly small. So back 3 years ago in 2017, my co-author Dave Rendall and I set out on a quest to find how brands actually truly created that separation. And we looked at over 250 examples. And what we found out, that it was pretty simple, that there was only 2 ways to be able to stand out. One, you had to embrace what made you weird. Embrace your weirdness. Or 2, you had to purposefully avoid being normal. Now, as we looked across 250 examples, it turns out that there's 7 different types of what we call a pink goldfish. Little things that you do to differentiate and stand out. And it all begins with the number 1 of 5 types that we're going to talk about today, this idea of flaunting. And the definition of flaunting that we like comes from Merriam-Webster. It's this idea of parading without shame, not being afraid to accept who you are. Now, all of the 7 concepts lie in what we call the flaunting matrix. And let me explain a little bit of the flaunting matrix. On the vertical y-axis, you at the top, you have what makes you weird, and at the bottom, what everyone else considers as normal. And then on the horizontal x-axis, you can either lean in and do more or purposefully pull back and do less. And so this gives us 4 different quadrants. We've got an animal that's associated with each of these 4. So let's start with the first, which is doing less of what makes you weird, unique, or different. We call this the cow or the conform quadrant. You see, the spots of a cow are like our fingerprints. No 2 cows are alike. But do they know that they're different? They're blissfully unaware of what makes them different. In fact, one cow could walk and create a path. All of the other cows would follow right behind and make a cow path. Now, the second quadrant is the exact opposite of a cow. This is actually leaning in and doing more of what makes you weird. And we call this the peacock or the strut quadrant. Now, the feathers of a peacock are like the spots of a cow. What's the difference? A peacock owns what makes them different, and they're not afraid to strut and put it out there for the world to see, right? They're embracing that. They're doubling and tripling down on that uniqueness. Now, the third quadrant is what we call the zebra or the match quadrant. Zebras are black with white stripes. And here's the thing, has anyone ever been able to tell one zebra from another zebra? It's almost impossible. Simply even by adding or matching and adding stripes would be no way to be able to stand out. In fact, this is an interesting bit of trivia. Zebras will actually group themselves in 4 or 5 as a prey defense. When a lion sees 4 or 5 zebras, they don't see 4 or 5 zebras. They see one really big zebra. Now, the fourth quadrant is the opposite of the zebra. This is actually pulling back and doing less of what others consider as normal. We call that the polar bear or the subtract quadrant. Now, polar bears, believe it or not, are black, just like a zebra. We see polar bears as white because their fur is hollow and translucent, meaning that light passes right through, and as the light passes through, each of the colors within the spectrum get removed, and what bounces back and what our eyes pick up is that absence of color or white. So this is the idea of purposely pulling back and doing less than what others consider as the normal course of behavior. So which 2 animals do we advocate that you want to be like? Well, we say you want to stay in this, what we call it, the flaunting zone. You want to be like a peacock and a polar bear. And you want to be able to flaunt and represent what makes you unique, weird, or different. And it's based on this simple idea that your flaws actually hold the key to what makes you awesome. Or as we call it in the Pink Goldfish, the things that make you flawsome. I mentioned that there are 7 different types. We've just covered flaunting, which is the cornerstone. And if I tell people, if you don't believe me that your flaws actually hold the key to what makes you awesome, then you need to consult the great philosopher of our time, Kanye. Now let me bring in Dave. He's going to give you a great example of flaunting and take you through some of the other types.
So Stan and I wrote the book, Pink Goldfish, and after we published it, one of the most amazing pink goldfish examples came out, and we immediately added it to our audio book. And those folks saw our recording for the audiobook because we did it on video, and they contacted us. I actually spoke at their conference last year. It's Nebraska tourism. Now, I know everyone who's watching this webinar has been to Nebraska. It's one of the hottest places to visit in America. And when people are allowed to travel again, that's definitely where we're going. And you all know that's absolutely not true. Their former slogan for Nebraska used to be Nebraska nice. Nobody was going to Nebraska. Everybody goes to their neighbor, Colorado, Whitewater Rapids, big mountains. Nobody was going to Nebraska. So their new slogan embraced their imperfections. It was honest about the realities of who they were. And it said this, it said, Nebraska, honestly, it's not for everyone. Right? And it went viral immediately. Late night talk show hosts, New York Times did an article on it. People had to know what was going on in Nebraska. In fact, Stephen Colbert asked them on TV, he said, Nebraska, are you okay? And they responded on Twitter, no, we're not, because that's Oklahoma. Nobody was paying attention to Nebraska. And then everyone was paying attention to Nebraska because they said, you know what, honestly, this isn't the greatest place on earth. We don't have something for everyone. This is for some people, but not for all people. Here's one of their ads, for example. It says, lucky for you, there's nothing to do here. You may not know this, and I didn't know till I looked it up. These people are floating down a river in a cow trough. This is a container made for cows to drink out of. One person has a paddle, and they're not even using it. They've got a cooler. They're probably drinking something alcoholic. If that's your version of a good time, Nebraska is the place for you. You're not risking your life on the Whitewater Rapids. You're relaxing. You're taking it easy. You're floating down a real life lazy river. They don't have what Colorado has, but they have something that's absolutely fantastic. So that's a little bit more about flaunting. The next one is lopsiding. This is doing more of what your competitors are trying to do less of. One of the problems when we're not a Pink Goldfish is we end up following the benchmarks, we end up following the industry standards, we end up following the best practices of everybody else, which makes us look like everyone else because we're doing what everyone else is doing. So lopsiding is that first attempt to say, wait a second, they're all trying to do less of something that seems bad, which is why they're trying to do less of it. We're going to do more. A great example of this is Hardee's. In the West, it's Carl's Jr. They've sort of merged over the years after kind of a nasty divorce years ago. And Hardee's was going out of business. When I was, 20 years ago, Hardee's was going out of business. They were closing stores. Their profits were declining. They were just another place with burgers, fries, shakes, and sodas. Nobody cared. So they're closing down. They're losing profits. They're struggling. They're trying to figure out how to make things better. And meanwhile, Super Size Me comes out. Well, you'd think if you're already struggling, you're about to go out of business when Super Size Me comes out and says, oh man, when you eat these fatty burgers and when you eat these fries and when you drink these big sodas, it makes you overweight. It increases your cholesterol, gives you high blood pressure. If you didn't see the movie, Morgan Spurlock ate McDonald's 3 times a day for 30 days in a row and tracked his health along the way. Spoiler alert, he didn't get healthier. And so how did the industry respond? Well, McDonald's started offering yogurt and water and salad and fruit, and so did the other fast food places. The industry wisdom, the conventional wisdom was we have to offer less of the bad things in food. So Hardee's is struggling. Super Size Me could be the thing that puts them completely out of business if they follow what everybody else is doing, including the industry leader at McDonald's. And instead of offering less of all of those bad things, Hardee's decided to lopside and to offer more. And they started with the thick burger. This is the all-American thick burger. It's got a hot dog sliced in half on there. It's got the potato chips inside because you shouldn't have to bother with reaching down and burning all those extra calories to pick them up yourselves. They've helpfully put it right into the burger for you. This is more calories than you need for approximately a month and a half. And this is already dividing the audience, right? As you're watching this, it's lunchtime. Some of you are getting really hungry and some of you might never eat again, right? And that's what Hardee's is doing. They're offering more of what everyone else is offering less of. And that's very attractive to some people, and it's very repulsive to other people. And that's precisely why it works. They didn't stop with the thick burgers. They've done all sorts of Philly cheesesteak thick burgers, and they take terrible sandwiches that are incredibly unhealthy and put them on top of a half-pound burger. But they didn't stop there. Their newest creation is called the Apocalypse Burrito and Biscuit, right? You shouldn't reference the apocalypse when you're talking about food that goes into people's body. You're also, if you don't know about food advertising, not supposed to have a black background, but they're trying to remind you or give you a hint about what's about to happen inside of your body, right? The darkness is about to move through you. Your life is about to end. I love that they have this in a burrito and a biscuit, because I can just imagine somebody walking in and going, oh, do you have that in a wrap? I mean, I'd really love that, but I mean, I'm watching my carbs. Do you have that in a wrap with a Diet Coke, right? The Apocalypse Burrito Biscuit. If you're not getting it, it's the Apocalypse because it's got bacon, ham, and sausage. It's got the entire pig in one sandwich, right? Their slogan is eat like you mean it, right? Hardee's is not trying to help you be healthier. Hardee's is making you unhealthier. They're giving you more of all of the bad things that everyone's telling you should have less of, and therefore all the other fast food companies are trying to give you less of. Now let's go back to the beginning, because this is where it gets interesting. You're thinking, okay, Hardee's is fringe, and I don't even go to Hardee's, and I don't even have a Hardee's in my area. Let's go back to McDonald's. Because McDonald's is the one that's supposed to have something for everyone, something for the kids and for the family and all those Happy Meals and all those kinds of things. Well, remember, McDonald's started offering fruit and salad and yogurt and water when Super Size Me came out, because they said, hey, we're being accused of making people overweight and making people unhealthy. We've got to fix this. We've got to give the people what they want. And so they went with less of all those things, less calories, less fat, less sugar, right? So what happened? Well, after 10 years, they looked at their stats and they discovered no one's buying the fruit. No one's buying the salad. No one's buying the yogurt. Maybe people are buying an occasional bottle of water, but nobody wants the healthy things that we're offering. And so McDonald's recently took all of those things off of the menu because, spoiler alert, people don't eat at McDonald's to try to get healthier. McDonald's is what you would think of as supposed to be the middle. They're supposed to have something for everybody. They shouldn't lopside, but they went with less of, and now they're going back in the Hardee's direction. Hardee's became the leader when McDonald's already had a big lead. This isn't, Pink Goldfish isn't a fringe approach. This is a solid approach that can actually make you the market leader when you respond differently than all of your competitors by turning up the volume when everyone else is turning it down. The next one is antagonizing. We all know about customer loyalty. We all know about customer evangelists. We all know that you're supposed to have raving fans, right? You're supposed to, what are you supposed to do when somebody gets upset? You're supposed to give them a coupon. You're supposed to call them up, maybe write them a letter, try to entice them to come back. You're supposed to apologize. But remember, Stan taught us about flaunting. You're not supposed to apologize. You're supposed to be unapologetic, and that's what antagonizing is. And the best example we know for this is the Alamo Drafthouse Cinema. They have really strict rules. When you watch a movie at the Alamo Drafthouse Cinema, you can't come in late, you can't talk, you can't text. No kids can come in on their own without adult supervision. If you're 15 to 17 years old, and you want to watch a movie at the Alamo Drafthouse by yourself without an adult, you have to take a class and pass a test. They're serious at the Alamo Drafthouse. They say it this way. They say, at the Alamo Drafthouse Cinema, we have a simple rule. If you talk or text during a movie, we kick you out. Sometimes that pisses the movie talker off. What follows is an actual voicemail a customer left us after being kicked out. So here's what happened. Customer comes in, doesn't follow the talking and texting rules. They give everyone one warning. They're reasonable. She keeps going. They kick her out. She gets upset. She leaves a nasty voicemail. What she thinks is, I'm the customer. I'm right. You should try to make me happy. You're going to figure this out. What they do is the complete opposite. They turn it into a PSA. They record the voicemail. They play it at the beginning of their movies, and they even put it on YouTube and got millions of hits by telling people, hey, if you're like this lady, don't come here. So here's the actual voicemail that she left. She said, yeah, I was wondering if you actually enjoy treating your customers like pieces of shit. because that's how I felt when I went to the Alamo Drafthouse, okay? You know what? I didn't know I wasn't supposed to text in your little crappy-ass theater. It was too fucking dark in that place to even find my seat, all right? I was using my phone as a flashlight to get to my fucking seat. So excuse me for using my phone in the USA Magnited States of America. I don't know how many of you knew that we lived in the Magnited States of America, where you're free to text in a theater. I wasn't aware that I couldn't text in your theater, all right? I've texted in all the other theaters in Austin. I think that's quite an accomplishment. I'm not sure if there's a punch card for that. And no one ever gave a fuck about what I was doing with my fucking phone, all right? And it was on silent. It wasn't on loud. It wasn't bothering anybody. You guys were obviously being assholes to me. And I'm sure that's what you do, you know, to rip people off. You take my money and throw me out. You know, I will never be coming back to your Alamo Drafthouse or whatever. I'd rather go to a regularlier theater, another new word she created, where people are actually polite. You know, I'm going to tell everyone about how shitty you are. I'm pretty sure you guys are being assholes on purpose. Now let's stop there for a second. And first, let's recognize Stan's amazing censorship that he just did. We decided during a book on imperfection, we would give you some imperfect censorship of the swearing in that particular bit. But she says, I'm going to tell everybody about how shitty you are. Beep. And she will. And remember, we've all been taught to be afraid of people. Unhappy customers will tell so many more people than happy customers will. But think about it in this situation. This is exactly what you want. You've antagonized her on purpose. She now goes and tells everyone how terrible you are, but think about their responses. When she's telling everyone how terrible you are, she's actually telling most people how wonderful they are, because what she's saying without knowing it is people like me won't be at that theater. It'll be quiet. They take the rules seriously. They actually follow up and uphold the standards that they have at the Alamo Drafthouse Cinema. She's going to push away the wrong people, people like her. She's going to attract the right people while she's complaining. So she said, I'm going to tell everyone, please do. I think you're doing this on purpose. We are, right? So thanks for making me feel like a customer. Thanks for taking my money, assholes, right? And what did they say? They said, you're welcome, right? That's not an apology. That's not coupons. That's not a phone call from the founder. Thanks for not coming back to the Alamo Texter. What Tim League, the founder, said is we wanted to take a hard stand and say that people like that are not welcome at the Alamo Drafthouse. So we will get rid of those people and make it a better place for the rest of the moving going public, right? Alamo Drafthouse antagonizes people on purpose. That's part of what makes them successful. The next one is withholding. We've talked about flaunting, parade it without shame, be unapologetic. We've talked about lopsiding, do more of what other people are trying to do less of. We talked about antagonizing, make the right people or the wrong people unhappy on purpose. Now it's time for the fourth one, withholding, do less of what other people are trying to do more of. Now that sounds ridiculous. Why would you try to do less? People want more store hours. They want more locations. They want more options. And you go, no, we're not going to do that. We're going to do less. I was waiting in customs, one of the things I hate to do, but now I really wish I could do it because I haven't been able to travel for so long. And I was waiting for customs in Canada and I saw this advertisement and I looked them up and found this amazing example of doing less. It's called Alt Hotels. It's a hotel chain in Canada. And their slogan, look at that on the slide, we do less. I really challenge anybody who's paying attention to this to have that be your slogan for 2021. We do less. In fact, given the recent pandemic, that may be some people's slogan. We don't do that. We don't do that anymore. We do less. We do not have a mini bar. We do have a hip lounge. We do less. We do not have a concierge. We do have an app with all the hotspots. We do less. We do not have a pool. We do have a pool table. That's not even a fair trade. We do less. We do not have a bellman. We do have a helpful and versatile staff. We do less. We do not offer room service. We do offer fresh grab-and-go meals. Now let's talk strategy for a second. This isn't just marketing. This is strategy. We do not offer room service. We do offer fresh grab-and-go meals. When you take the time, the energy and resources that you otherwise would put into room service and you invest it into fresh grab and go meals, they're going to be better than if you just throw some room service in a styrofoam box and hand it to somebody and go, look at that, grab and go. but you're also trying to do two things when you're trying to do both. And you have to divide your time, energy, and resources between those two things. And you can't be really good at either one of them because you're trying to do both of them. But look at what Alt Hotels does. They don't just pick one, they reject the other. They let you know up front that they're not even trying to do that. Think about the flaunting again. Flaunting goes through all of these. Flaunting is unapologetic. We don't do that. We're not sorry that we don't do that. We don't do that on purpose, and we're not planning to start doing that. We do less. That sounds outrageous until I show you that an actual company in the real world is doing that. And that's what I want you to notice about what Stan and I are doing with this webinar and with this book. We're not telling you, hey, Stan and I have gone to school and we've done a bunch of research and we're telling you do less. We're telling you be weird. We're telling you flaunt your weaknesses. No, no, no. We're giving you actual examples from the real world of companies that are doing this, and it's helping them to succeed. Don't trust us. Follow up on the examples, watch this work in real life, and then look at how you can duplicate that. And Stan's going to talk a little bit about that at the end. So the last one that I'm going to talk about is opposing. Opposing is exactly what it sounds like. It's doing the opposite of what other people are doing, but not the opposite of what failures of what bad companies are doing the opposite of maybe sometimes even the industry leaders. And a great example of that is Black Friday. Black Friday is the day after Thanksgiving. It's become such a big shopping day that I've been over in Europe where they don't celebrate American Thanksgiving. If you weren't aware, that was an American holiday. And yet they have Black Friday sales in the same way because it's become a phenomenon. And what is Black Friday? It's open up early, stay open late, and cut your prices as low as possible to draw as many people in and to sell as much as you possibly can. And why is that so important? Well, retail stores make money when they sell things, and the number one indicator of the whole Christmas season is what do you sell? How much can you sell on Black Friday? If you can capture people on that day, if you can sell things on that day, it's going to be a good Christmas season. And Christmas season is also an indicator of potentially what the whole calendar year is going to be like in retail because it's such a big part of the shopping year. And so everyone knows that you have to have a big sale, you have to cut your prices, you have to be open early. These are the industry standards, these are the benchmarks. If you're trying to run a retail operation and you follow the leaders, the ones that are succeeding, these aren't the ones that are failing, you're gonna have an amazing Black Friday sale. If you're opposing, you're gonna question that whole model and ask yourself, is it really necessary to sell so much, lower our prices, open up early, stay late on the biggest shopping day of the year? And the company that's done that recently is REI. They started it a few years ago and they called it Opt Outside. They don't just close their stores, they also close their websites. Now, some of you thinking about the workers and you're thinking, well, that's not fair. Now those people aren't getting paid. They're cutting people's wages. Absolutely not. They pay people. They give them a paid day off. And Opt Outside says, look, this Friday, this Black Friday, REI doesn't want you to go shopping. Now let's just stop there. They're a retail outlet. They can't make money unless you're shopping, and then they say, don't go shopping. We are closing the day to spend outside. We're paying our employees to go goof around, to get in kayaks. If you're not sure what REI is, they're an outdoor outfitter. They sell the stuff for you to go camping, backpacking, hiking, all that sort of thing. They're modeling the kinds of things they want to see. Look at what they say. While the rest of the world is fighting it out in the aisles, we'll be spending our day a little differently. Join us, right? Join us in doing the opposite of what all of the other businesses are doing. Now, some businesses have started now copying REI in doing the opposite of what everyone else is doing with Black Friday. So that's opposing. I'm going to turn it back over to Stan to cover the last one, which is micro weirding.
Great. The final of type that we're going to talk about today is the M in the Flawsome framework, and it's called micro weirding. It's all about doing the little things. So these are very similar. If you remember the Purple Goldfish webinar that we did a couple weeks ago, it's all about little things that you do to stand out, to attract that word of mouth. And the example I want to share here comes from the hotel industry. And it's a hotel in Southern California called the Magic Castle. Now, it's in Southern California. If you've never heard it before, it's the highest rated hotel on all of TripAdvisor. So last time I looked, it had over 3,500 five-star reviews. And they're a great example because they do a lot of things that are a little different and more, and they also do a lot of little things that are less. One of the examples of what they do less is that they don't have mini bars in the room at the Magic Castle. If you want a soda or you want a candy bar, you simply go down to the front desk and they will actually give you a soda or a candy bar for free. But the one example that we love about doing a little bit more happens to do with their pool. Now at their pool, they have what's called a popsicle hotline. Now you're sitting at the pool, you're getting a little warm, you simply walk over, you pick up the phone, and within 1 minute they answer. You don't even have to dial. They answer, you tell them what flavors you would like, and within 1 minute, they walk out with a white glove and a silver tray, and they deliver you your popsicle poolside. Do you think that's memorable for people, that they appreciate that they talk about it? Absolutely. So again, micro weirding is the last in the 7 different types of Pink Goldfish, the Flossom format. Really quickly, there's one you're going to notice here that we did not cover. And we've kind of done it on purpose. It's swerving. And here's the thing. We're actually not going to tell you what swerving is. We're going to withhold and not tell you what it is. In fact, for some of you, I hope it antagonizes you and pisses you off, because you know what? I'm going to lopside the fact and flaunt that I'm not going to tell you what swerving is. Now, that's the 7 different types. Let's talk a little bit of how do you create your own pink goldfish. And essentially, it's a 4-step process. We call it the 4 A's. And I'm going to quickly give you an idea of how each of the A's play out. So number 1, it starts with awareness. You have to look at yourself in the mirror and go, what makes us weird? What makes us unique? What makes us different? Now here's the thing, when I look in the mirror, I don't see the entire picture, right? I have blind spots. So what we encourage companies to do is, 1, ask your employees, what are the things that they see that make you different and unique and weird? You might even want to ask your customers, or even ask your suppliers, because your suppliers, and most often, are not only just doing business with you, they're also doing business with your competition. Now, once you figure out what makes you unique, weird, and different, the second step is this: acceptance. Meaning that you have to wrap your arms around it and accept what makes you unique. And once you've accepted it, you're now ready for the 3rd step in the process, and that's what we call alignment. Now, alignment means when someone visits your website or when they walk into your office, are they seeing that uniqueness? Is it being represented? When they walk on the showroom floor, or when they pick up and unbox your product or service, what is that experience like? Is it aligned with what makes you unique? Once you've aligned everything, you're ready for the 4th A. I believe it's the most fun one. That 4th A is amplification. Meaning that not just turning up the volume, but in some instances, purposely, turning it down all the way to 0 or 1. Now, the fun ones are when you turn the volume up, and I don't want you to actually turn it up to 10. What number do I want you to turn it up to? No, if you know it, put it in the chat. I want you to turn it up to 11. Now, if you're not familiar with the concept of being one louder or going up to 11, it's from this movie right here, Spinal Tap, and an infamous scene within the movie where Christopher Guest is explaining to the documentary filmmaker, Rob Reiner, why his amplifiers have a little something extra. Let me play this for you.
This is a top to what we use on stage, but it's very, very special because if you can see, the numbers all go to 11. Look, right across the board. 11, 11,
and most of
11,
the amps go up to 10.
Exactly.
Does that mean it's louder? Is it any louder?
Well, it's one louder, isn't it? It's not 10. You see, most blokes, be playing at 10. You're on 10 here, all the way up, all the way up, all the way up. You're on 10 on your guitar. Where can you go from there? Where?
I don't know.
Nowhere, exactly. What we do is if we need that extra push over the cliff, you know what we do?
Put it up to 11.
11, exactly. One louder.
Why don't you just make 10 louder and make 10 be the top number and make that a little louder?
These go to 11.
Now, here's the thing, and we're going to open it up to questions and comments shortly, but I just want to talk about this idea of either turning it up or turning it down. First off is sometimes when we think we're doing more, I think there's a perception that when people see that, they discount that little more. So the idea of going past 10, going up to 11, it's almost like you have to exaggerate it to make sure that it stands out and it lands. Now, on the other side of the equation, there are some things that you need to turn down to 0 or 1. And by doing less, you're going to stand out. Now, here's the thing. We say you can't be great at everything you do, right? If you want to lopside and do more of some things, that means that you have to also what? Do less of others. And so the really big takeaway from the entire book is that you want to be great at what makes you unique, but also with what your customers value the most. So turning up on the dial on the things that matter, and maybe turning it all the way down to 0 on the things that don't. So with that, I'd love to open it up to questions and comments. We've got Sal helping us out. He's going to read some of this out. But I've got a question for Dave to start us out. And we get this when we do this. Like, where do I start? Right? Where do you start in this process?
Yeah, you start with what you already are. You start with those weaknesses you're always trying to fix in your strategy sessions. You start with those customer complaints. You start with those things you don't want to do and you don't like to do. It's not about manufacturing it. We'll talk about that a little bit later. At the beginning, it's about illuminating imperfections, and the assumption is some of those already exist. You already don't have a lot of locations, or you already do offer unhealthy food. I was looking at some old pictures of, I've taken each of my daughters on a speaking trip to Atlantic City, and there's a place there called It's Sugar. And It's Sugar has a big sign that's like, we have stuff with GMO, high cholesterol, tons of calories. It's like the opposite of one of those healthy labels on the side. They don't have to try to think about it. When they look at it, they're like, oh, some people won't like us because this isn't good for you. And then it's like, okay, well, how do we highlight that? How do we spotlight that? So I think starting with just where you are, do an analysis. So you started with it. Start with that awareness. Start with that assessment. We have the assessment in the book where you can look at how your weaknesses could be strengths. Start with who you already are. Look for what that upside is. Look for what you want to turn up the volume on. Look for what you want to be more of. But just start with who you are and stop apologizing, right? Stop wishing you were something else. Stop comparing yourself to some other company or some other business because they're better. They've got their own unique set of strengths and weaknesses.
And I think based upon how big your company is and your level of tolerance in terms of doing stuff that may be a little risky at first, I would say we counsel people maybe start with some of the small micro weirding things that you can do.
Yeah, start and do some experiments. I mean, you don't have to put all the eggs in one basket, right? You don't have to put all your eggs in one basket. but you can too. I mean, that's opposing. That's another way to do it. But yeah, start with some experiments. One of my friends runs a printing company up in DC, and one of their core values is make cool shit. And 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 again, think printing. I mean, we're talking printing, old school. Nobody wants printing. Everything's digital. They're in the printing business. And so how do you succeed in the printing business? And so one of their values, and so this is key. This was already one of their values. This wasn't a marketing stunt. This was one of their values. And they're like, wait a second, that's one of the ones that we all really connect with. It's something that our employees really connect with. We're proud of the fact that we help people make cool shit. And so they started putting it on their walls. They started really talking about it, but they were still hesitant to, with some of their more conservative customers, with some of their bigger, more long-term customers, they were kind of rolling it out only with the people that they thought could kind of handle it. And then they actually got some pushback from some of their more conservative customers who were like, hey, we want to make cool shit too. It's no fair. How come they get to make the cool shit and we don't?
Right.
So they started small, but then they started with their employees, and they saw this really connected with their employees. Their employees were unapologetic about this, and their employees weren't afraid of saying a bad word. Maybe some of you are offended by that right now, and Stan and I have to deal with that. Do we say the swear words? And again, if that turns you off enough, then you're probably not going to like some of the other things that Stan and I do. So we probably,
Well, let's make a point. We're not for everyone.
we're not for everyone.
And we're okay with that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because here's the thing, if we try to be for everyone, who are we for?
Well, and even that, there's
Well,
people
for no
who
one.
there's people who, when you won't swear or you don't swear or you pull that kind of stuff out or you do bleep it really, really well, they're going to be frustrated. Oh, wow, are we not adults here? We can't say what we really think. And so, and again, that's no comment on who you are as a person if you don't like swearing, but that's a good example. That's the only reason I swear it. That's the only reason I share it, is because it's a great example, right? And it's a great example of something that could have been offensive, that could have been a problem, could have been a weakness or a negative. Be professional, don't be offensive. And what they found was the thing they were doing that was potentially offensive was really, really valuable. And they've really been able to build now this movement around it. But they started small. They started internally. They started with some select customers. And then it really started to boom, and they saw that it was going to work. So you don't have to roll out some huge thing. We do less in 2021. You can start with your new customers, not offering this new thing or offering this new thing. You can start with a select group within your organization to do something a little different and see how it goes before you put a lot of resources into it.
Great. So we've got a question from Peter A. We both know Peter A.
Yeah.
Shout out Peter A. If you're a small startup, can you start antagonizing before you have a core client base?
Can I cover that one?
Sure.
That's exactly how I think you get a core client base, is you start antagonizing. One of the examples we didn't use today, just because we're trying to manage our time, is out in Denver. They're called Black Coffee. And their slogan is death to cream, right? So in a world
you cannot order cream there.
So in a world of Starbucks, 14 billion potential variations, and can I get a soy milk latte with whatever? They are like, look, their message is, if you like coffee and you know how to get the right beans, roast them properly, grind them properly, brew them properly, you'll have an amazing cup of coffee. We're going to teach you how to do that. And if you're not into that, don't come here, go somewhere else.
Right.
And so their whole initial thing is built on, their whole thing is built on antagonizing. And I mean, even that's in the name of their company, Black Coffee. If you're confused, I wonder what they sell there. They're like, they say it twice, and that's
Right.
part of flaunting. That's part of antagonizing. That's part of opposing. They're offering you thousands of options. We've got one, kind of two. You can get it black or black, right? Those are your two options. So I think the answer is yes, you can start antagonizing immediately. That's part of what makes people feel special, is like, we're on the inside. Those people hate us. Those people don't like us. Those people are against us. Those people are wrong.
Right.
We're black coffee drinkers. We don't go to Starbucks or Dunkin' Donuts or whatever it happens to be.
Right. Another question here from Alan, out in South Carolina, the Myrtle Beach area. I work for a large retailer. Is it possible for my store to be unique when driven by a large corporate monolithic structure? I'll jump in. You can.
Yeah.
I think when it comes to franchises or say retailers, I think it's harder to stand out when you're in the field, because there's an adherence to process, rules, standards, especially when somebody can go from one market to another, you start to create expectations. But I do think that there are smart companies out there that allow their stores out in the field to experiment and do small little things.
Yeah.
And one of the ones I've talked about in the past is Enterprise Rent-A-Car. So they were mainly in town as a rental car agency, as opposed to being just out at the airport. Well, their biggest client was repair shops. And one of the branch managers was getting frustrated because he was getting all these calls to come and get these customers who were stranded after their car got towed to the repair shop. And he just said, you know what? I'll go and pick you up. Now, to Enterprise's credit, they saw that out in the field and they went, well, that makes sense. And they instituted it wide. So I think smart companies give a little bit of latitude for the field to be able to experiment.
Yeah. So yeah, looking for ways within the rules, or the better to ask forgiveness and permission sort of thing. But even looking for, if you can make an argument for a regional difference, a local difference, where you can not damage the overall brand. Another thing for you to think about personally, though, is if you're vibing with Pink Goldfish, then being part of a corporate monolithic structure may not be for you, or you pick one like a Hardee's where they're willing to experiment with those kinds of things and be unusual. Another great example of this was the McDonald's filet of fish. The McDonald's filet of fish started when a McDonald's franchisee, and again, talk about corporate monolith, but he had a lot of Catholic customers and they won't eat meat on Fridays.
Right, fish on Fridays.
And so he's trying to offer his fish fillet sandwich, and Ray Kroc's idea, Ray Kroc was a genius, but he had a terrible idea with this one. He goes, nah, I think we'll go pineapple sandwich. And so what the franchisee was actually able to get Ray to do was do a contest, and they offered pineapple sandwiches and fillet of fishes on Friday, and they watched which one sold more. And it's not hard to imagine that no one wanted a pineapple sandwich. And fillet of fish then spread everywhere, because even though there may not be a huge Catholic majority in every McDonald's area, there are probably at least a few Catholic people.
Right.
And now it's just become a sandwich, and most people don't even know that story. So I think looking at, can I make a reasonable suggestion? Can I share this book? Can I share this idea? Can I share this webinar with person one step up from me, or with the organization?
Right.
So I think there's things you can do, but I also would challenge you to maybe look at some of these same processes with your own self and say, is this really the right spot for me? If Pink Goldfish is making sense to you,
right,
do you want to stay part of a corporate, monolith
that doesn't value that, embracing what makes you
Yeah.
different? I'll share this because we're on McDonald's. One of the things that makes me weird, and you know this, when I travel to a different country,
Stan loves McDonald's.
first thing that I do is go to a McDonald's, because I'm always interested in how the experience is a little bit different. But two, every country has a custom 1, 2, or 3 things that's unique to that country. And I love it. I think it was last summer, McDonald's actually highlighted items from around the entire world, which I think was interesting. What else do you get as a question when we do Pink?
Well, I think we covered some of it with the Buckley's one. People want to say, like, is this profitable? Is anybody profitable who does this? I think it's easy to think of it as a fringe, sort of silly kind of thing. And that's why we've included customers like REI and things like that. I think the big one is mostly kind of, how do you get started? Or what would I do? I think the biggest one is kind of, what's good about this bad thing? That's why we included the assessment. So you say,
Yeah, talk about the assessment, because I think it's a really interesting thing for people. Great. Okay.
The assessment is really simple. It's got 44 strengths and weaknesses on it. And when you pick your weakness, it tells you what the corresponding strength is. For example, you say, I'm a really small business, and, if I'm going to compete with these big guys, I've just got to get bigger. My problem is I'm too small. That's the weakness. Yeah, but when you're small, you can be more responsive. You don't have that corporate monolith. And look at what just happened, right? That question about corporate monolith shows the negative of being a corporate monolith. What's the great thing? You're huge. Economies of scale, all these kinds of things. What's the downside? You try to make a decision and 847 people have to agree. It takes 6 years. And meanwhile, that small company has already taken you over, and taken all your competition. Or taken all your customers. And so I think that's the real key, is being open. That's the part, again, that has to start with that awareness. What is that strength that comes with the weakness? So part of this all starts with reframing the way you look at yourself. We tend to say, oh, I wish I was like, oh, it must be nice that they are, and we miss those advantages. So even on the corporate monolith side, I'd go back to that question and go, hey, what's awesome about being part of a corporate monolith, and how could you maybe play on that? We are so big, we are kind of everywhere. How can we take advantage of that?
Right. So Mark's got a great comment. He just threw it into the Q&A. Although many have closed, Sears was just about always the least popular anchor store in the mall. Malls are super busy during the holidays. After reading Pink Goldfish, I suggested that we highlight there's always parking by Sears, or easiest access to the mall during holiday 2018. We'd at least get more people walking through our doors. The market leaders didn't go for it in print, but some of the managers started sharing that on their store Facebook pages.
I love it.
That's cool.
Well, it's a great example of how, and this is why, let's go all the way back to the beginning. Differentiation is crucial. The number that achieve differentiation is depressingly small. And this is why. You had a great idea. You had a great idea for how to differentiate,
traffic, yeah.
but it required you to flaunt your weaknesses. It required you to illuminate imperfections. People think that doesn't work. That won't work.
Right.
You won't be able to connect with people that way, but it absolutely does work, right? It absolutely does work. And then you saw a local response where people are like, oh, people would totally do that. And then think about what happens. It's kind of like all the way back in the day to lost leaders and stuff with coupons. People come for one reason, and now they're walking through your store. And if people only come through, and if people start sharing, oh my gosh, there's tons of parking in front of Sears. Now you have this flow through your store that you never would otherwise get. So this goes all the way back to the beginning. You have to be willing, and this is why we shared so many examples. It works. I mean, think about it in Nebraska. Honestly, it's not for everyone, right? Sears, it's not for everyone, right? That's what you're saying by saying there's lots of parking out front. And so people really struggle to believe that we think we have to be perfect. We think we have to be flawless. We think we have to fix all the weaknesses, or at least pretend they don't exist. And that's not true. And by the way, look at what happened to Sears. They rejected your idea, and now there isn't a store, and now there's tons of parking in front of Sears, but you can't come in there because the store is boarded up, right? And so the strategy didn't work, but they held, that's the thing. They never questioned it though to the end. Just hang on to that strategy, be good at everything. And Sears is a great example of that. They were trying to be, you want appliances? We got that. You want clothes? We got that. Well, how many people are going to be great at making appliances and making clothes? Those are two very, very different things.
Yeah. It's like we talk about the difference between Target, Walmart, and Kmart, trying to be right in the middle there.
You end up in the middle. You end up average, invisible, mediocre.
All right. So we've got a great story that's going to wrap this up, and then we have a fun announcement that we want to share at the end. But for this story, I'm going to throw it to Dave, and we have to go back 600 years. Tell them about Ashikaga.
I'm going to say something that's in the now for a second.
Sure.
Because I saw a comment pop up over there. Somebody said they can't find the Pink Goldfish shirt online. It's really simple. DavidRendall.store. DavidRendall.store. Pink Goldfish. We're going to be wearing these this summer, although Stan's also going to get us some classier stuff. But Pink Goldfish, DavidRendall.store. You can get your Pink Goldfish shirt there. All right. So back to 1500s, 15th century.
15th century, 600
in Japan,
years ago.
Ashikaga Yoshimasa, he's got a tea bowl. And he loves his tea bowl. It's a beautiful tea bowl. But it breaks. And what do you do when something breaks? You get it fixed. But he got it fixed, and he wasn't excited about how they fixed it, and he sent it back with new instructions.
Well, it came back, and it had like this black, coarse, ugly glue. They used like metal staples. And like his heart just, I mean, this was his favorite tea bowl.
So he says, hey, do it again, but make it clear when you fix it. I want everyone who sees it later to know it's been broken, right? We're not trying to hide it. We're trying to highlight.
Right. He called in his best craftsman.
It's been damaged. Yeah.
Best craftsman.
So what they did is they developed something that's called kintsugi. They took lacquer and they took gold and they highlighted the cracks. They repaired it, but they made it clear forever that it had been repaired, that it wasn't perfect anymore. And that became the Japanese art of kintsugi. It became so popular that, Stan, what did some people start doing?
They would purposely take good pieces of pottery and smash them so they could apply the technique. Now,
You're in a hurry. You don't want to wait for your kintsugi. You're like, I want everybody, all the cool people have the kintsugi. And now stop it. Now think about how important that is for your business right now. We said start with illuminating imperfection. That's kintsugi.
right.
But then also start saying, what could we break? What could we intentionally create? And we talked about black coffee from the beginning of this product or service, from the beginning of this new idea. What's something that we could create that's imperfect on purpose,
Now,
not on accident?
my favorite takeaway is the idea that it wasn't better just because it was flawed, right? It was better because of the attention that was paid to the flaws, to not hide or conceal them, but to illuminate and bring those flaws to life.
Yeah.
And I think that's the great lesson of kintsugi.
Yeah. So one of our favorite quotes that we included in the book and we include in both of our talks is from Hugh McLeod from Gaping Void. He said, don't try to stand out from the crowd. Now let's stop there for a second, right? You got competition. It's raining. Everybody's got a black umbrella. Stan and I want you to have a pink umbrella, right? And then you're standing out from the crowd, but you're still where? You're still in the crowd.
Right.
And I think that's why so much differentiation fails, is because what people are doing is trying to be just a little bit different. No, I mean, our umbrella is a little less round than theirs is. Our umbrella is a little bit bigger than theirs is, but nobody can tell, right? Oh, it's a different color. It's still an umbrella.
Or I think what we do is, and I'm a marketer, so we start to benchmark the attributes of what the leader is, and then we start to try to match.
Well, and then at that point, we're not even trying to stand up from the crowd. We're trying to get in the crowd.
Right.
Hey, look at us. We're part of this crowd too. And so what Hugh says is don't try to stand out from the crowd. Avoid crowds altogether. Now think about that right now. There's a whole group of people standing over there and they're all wearing black. You're not standing there. You're standing over there. You're completely alone by yourself. That's where we're trying to get you to be. Lopsiding, opposing. We're trying to get you away from all of that competition, away from everyone else, so people can see you clearly and see you as a distinct choice.
Now we've got an announcement, because we're gonna live a little bit of the Pink Goldfish mantra. So you would think, well, look, don't go out on, do all of your presentations virtually. No. Next month, Dave and I are gonna go out on the road for the Pink Goldfish 2020 summer tour. Here's a little background on where we're gonna go. We're gonna hit over 20 cities. We're gonna start up into the Northeast, loop back down, and then work our way as far west as Nevada. Vegas, baby. We're gonna finish in Vegas and then come back on a southern route. So super excited. Anything you wanna share about the tour?
Well, just that we're hoping to get people back out to events again. And even if you want it to be a small one, even if you want to put people really far apart in shares, if you want to live stream or do part of it virtual for the people who aren't
I'm
comfortable
thinking
coming
outdoor
out yet.
events.
Ooh, that's a good idea.
Or
Outdoor events.
drive-in events.
Yeah. We're looking to get creative again to be Pink Goldfish, but also to start this going again. I think there's a lot of pent-up demand for, let's have an event, let's do something. Some of you are associations or groups where you need to do something for your members. You need to get people connected again. I don't think this is a question of can we meet? I think it's a question of how do we meet and how do we do something interesting?
Right.
And hopefully you've seen through this content that we're ready to do something beyond kind of your standard event, and we're up for doing something different. And if you look at the setup we've got here today, I think it shows you that we can do a good virtual event or some kind of hybrid event as well. We're very
We're
comfortable
both
with that.
certifiable, by the way.
Certified virtual presenters from eSpeakers.
From eSpeakers. Shout out to the folks
To
at
Joe,
eSpeakers.
Joe Heaps.
We also, which is really cool, we've got an entire workbook. So not only do we do, say, a keynote or, a breakout session. Thank you, Sal. We've got an entire workbook so we can actually go into those assessment exercises. We can do a strategy session and have fun with it. Let's face it. This is about the fun.
Well, and with the workbook, it gives people something to do beyond the event as well. I mean, it gives them some substance, something to take home and to actually apply back at the business that goes beyond just the event, right? So even if you think about providing the workbooks to people, there's a lot of value there.
Great. Any last things before I tell them about what's happening next week?
No.
All right, great. So next week, it's going to be the Gray Goldfish. So my co-author on Gray, Brian Doyle, is going to be joining me. This is just about a year old. This is all about leadership and navigating the gray areas of leading 5 generations. So you've got millennials that are now turning 40 this year. You've got Gen Z at 23 that's entering the workforce. We have 5 distinct generations now in the workplace. And so tune in next Tuesday. We'll talk about how do you navigate the gray. Thank you all for joining us today. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah. Thanks for joining us. It's been nice to talk to someone outside of my family for the first time in 3 months.
And we look forward to seeing you somewhere on the road in July. If you don't see you in person, follow us on Facebook. We're going to be doing a lot of live streaming from the road. We're also going to be updating the 2.0 version of the Pink Goldfish. So watch for all of those posts. We'll see you soon.